Welcome to Reykjavík Newscast. My name is Josie Anne. I'm a journalist with the Reykjavík Grapevine. And it's not so nice weather today in Reykjavík, as you can see. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But first, I just want to remind you that we have a new issue of our paper out. It came out last Friday. It's got a beautiful cover. I've got a copy with me to show you, but I'm going to show you when we get inside, because we're going to be filming inside today because the weather is so gross. Art is like hunched up behind the camera. We've got lots to talk about today, and we want to show you where we are. We're in an interesting place, so let's get to the news. The first thing to mention, obviously news-wise, is the weather. It is the 7th of July today, I believe. And yeah, it's the 7th. Can't work out my dates. And it should be the height of summer. It is the height of summer, but these summer storms in Iceland are not particularly unusual. So at the moment, there's a yellow weather warning from the Met Office across the majority of the country. Reykjavík is generally sheltered, but the bay just outside of Reykjavík is expected to have strong southwesterly winds reaching 25 to 30 metres per second, whilst in the central highlands winds could reach 30 to 40 metres per second, which is, especially hazardous, especially if you're thinking about climbing mountains or doing anything kind of outdoor related. And the Met Office has issued a warning for travellers to exercise particular caution. Which means really in practice that, drive slowly, drive carefully, especially if you're in a camper or like a higher sided vehicle. This can be particularly dangerous if the winds are high, and if you're ever unsure of the situation, take a break, wait for the winds to die down. The yellow weather warnings are issued until this evening, after which they're expected to die down. So it shouldn't last for too long. The weather for the rest of the week, it's not actually that cold. It feels cold, but it's quite mild, which is part of the reason why we have this particularly unsettled, stormy weather. And we're just kind of hoping that it dries up again and we get some actual summer. We're here today actually at the National Museum of Iceland. Really, really cool place. And we're going to tell you a little bit of news about something exciting that's been discovered here. But firstly, let's find out how we get inside and see if we can get out of this storm. Here we go. Woo. Come Diane. We're here from the Reykjavík Grapevine. We're here to film the newly discovered mittens, yes. A pair of woolen mittens that are in the care of the museum and have been so since the 1960s. It's just been, there's been a new way of identifying the age of these mittens, and it's been discovered that they are from the time of settlement, from 1,000 years ago. We're actually able to take you to come and have a look at these mittens, and we're going to meet somebody who's going to tell us a little bit more about them.
Hi.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Can you introduce yourself for us,
yes,
please?
Yes, my name is Oddur Klötz.
Great, I'm glad I didn't have to say that.
Oh. But anyways, yes, my name is Oddur, and I'm going to show you these mittens as they are on display here in the museum.
Wonderful. Do you want to lead the way?
Yes, I'll lead the way.
So you've had these mittens in your collection for quite a while, is that right?
Yes, they have been on display in the museum at least since the year 2000, when they created this exhibition we're walking through right now called Making of a Nation.
Okay.
But they were unearthed sometime before, I think.
Yes, I think they were found in the 1960s.
Yes.
And they were quite, they were buried underneath the ground. Is that correct?
Yes. So they were found by Kristján Eldjárn.
Okay,
Kristján Eldjárn is an archaeologist who later became president of Iceland in, I don't want to say the year, I don't want to say something wrong. Sometime in the 70s, I guess. But anyways, here are the mittens which are on display.
Oh, they are
And they were
so
found
beautiful.
under, let's say, 3 meters of dirt or so. And Christian Eldjárn, he was working as an archaeologist at the time, he found them and he made an educated guess. And he said that they were probably from the settlement, or from around 900 or the year 1000. And it turns out now, 60 years later, that he was right.
So, but there was no way of actually telling this at the time.
No, they didn't have these methods of age verifying old artifacts like they do today.
And it's incredible to see just how intact they are. And I was reading, this was sort of reported in RVK yesterday, that it's quite rare to find items in such good condition in Icelandic soil.
Yes, it is. And it was really just mere luck that they were able to find them, because these are one of the very few extant garments from the time. Most of the things that are preserved from these times in Icelandic history are, of course, made of metal or stone, but garments and wooden artifacts, they are more commonly, more often they have not, they're not extant.
Yes, yeah. They've not survived being
They've
in
not
the soil.
survived.
So the sort of ballpark that they put is that this came from between maybe the year 900 to it's like the 9th to 10th century. Is that right?
Yes.
What was kind of happening in Iceland at that time? Who was here?
So the first settlers were here, and of course the most famous settler in Iceland was, of course, Ingólfur Arnarson, and he settled here. It is believed that he had settled here in the year 874.
Okay.
But around that time, of course, Parliament was founded in 930, and then in the year 1000, the Norwegian king christened the nation, and we became Christian. So these were, let's say, these centuries, a time of great prosperity in Iceland, because we had just arrived with our agricultural supplies, our grain and our cattle and sheep, and we had formed a nation in a span of maybe 60 years or so when we first found Parliament, and we were very few at the time. And so from these times, to answer your question, yes, a time of great prosperity, and like the start of this making of a nation, which we're showing here in the museum.
It's incredible that these have survived that period, like quite an interesting and turbulent period, and are here for us to look at today with in this incredible museum.
Exactly.
And it's they're quite evocative as well. I mean, these are obviously a child's mitten.
Yes, and the biggest clue to why this is why these are child mittens are, of course, the size of them, and also you can see the band over here.
Yes.
And a lot of us Icelanders remember when we had these mittens as kids, they would be threaded into our sleeves with these bands, so they would hang from our sleeves over here, so we would, of course, not lose them from our jackets.
It's so precious to see that somebody's mother really, thought about this even at that time. But of course, these are not knitted, are they?
These are not knitted.
So tell us a little bit about that. Why do we know that they're not knitted?
Because it is generally known in Icelandic history that women didn't start. Of course, I say women because women were primarily knitting at the time.
Yeah.
But they didn't start knitting until sometime in the 16th century.
Okay.
And so they made these garments in these. And this is called a weighted loom.
Wow.
So what they did was they strung the garment or the wool thread to these rocks to weigh down the loom, so it would be stretched out, so it would be tight, and then they would use this piece of string over here to kind of thread it across, so they would make these garments.
Yes.
And this was called vavmál in Icelandic.
Okay.
But the English word for it is homespun.
Homespun, yes, okay. And it
this,
creates this kind of quite tightly knitted cloth here.
Yes, it does. And what's also interesting about this is that, of course, this was made to make clothing, but this was also a currency in Iceland.
Wow, really? Okay.
In the old Commonwealth ages, around, say, 1100 or 1200, this was one of the main exports in Iceland, as well as a currency. And at weddings, the grooms would come with maybe hundreds of meters of vavmál to pay for the bride, which they were buying at the time. Yes, it wasn't exactly very PC in the 1200s.
It's still, isn't it? Weddings are still essentially called like a bride.
Brúðkaup.
Yeah,
yes.
yeah, a bride buying.
We still have the old word, which is brúðkaup.
Even if the customs have changed.
Yes.
Yeah, the words.
And also the word gifting, which means like the giving of something.
Yes. yeah. Well, that is absolutely fascinating, Oddr. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes,
we're going to go and check
pleasure.
out some of the rest of the museum, but we really encourage people, of course, to come and see these mittens and come and, seek out Oddr. He knows everything, clearly.
Yes, thank you so much.
Hi. So could I get a black coffee and a oat milk latte, please? That was super interesting to see those mittens, and really lovely to think about how there's just this kind of like continuous thread, pun not intended, between the settlement of Iceland and the creation of Parliament, the oldest Parliament, running Parliament in the world, and the people who live here now, especially, the descendants of that child who wore those mittens. The descendants are probably living here still. So it's really special and quite emotional to see. But on to some other news. Unfortunately, we have to report on COVID again. It's been a while. But COVID numbers have been on the rise since the beginning of June, and there are now 44 individuals currently hospitalised. This is not unusual in Iceland, or not unusual specifically for Iceland. This is a trend that's being seen worldwide and in other countries in Europe and across the globe. The deputy epidemiologist, Camilla Sigríður Jósefsdóttir, has said that there are two main groups who are most significantly affected, the ones who are in intensive care in hospital, and that is the elderly and the unvaccinated. Those are the ones who make up the majority in intensive care and are experiencing the greatest illness. The variants at play now are the BA4 and BA5 versions of Omicron. So it's still Omicron, but it's slightly different versions of this. And there's nothing to indicate that these versions are any more deadly or anything like that. They are definitely very contagious, but they don't seem to be causing a higher death rate or anything like that. But the conversation is essentially still do get vaccinated and it will protect you. The vaccines that we already have will protect you against these variants. And Camilla has also said that she kind of puts the blame of the increased infection rates on reduced testing and also the general kind of public fatigue with COVID-19. What do you think? Do you think our coffee's ready yet? No. Okay, we'll still go. I'm just really uncaffeinated and want my coffee. But onto some lighter news. There's been a recent study in Iceland, a recent survey, that has revealed that 31% of Icelanders believe in elves. 57% said that they did not believe, 11% were unsure, and 1% did not want to answer at all, presumably because they were being held hostage by an elf and didn't want to upset them. Significantly more women believe in elves than men. 44% of women reported to believe in elves compared to 27% of men. And in addition, nearly half of the people who were surveyed who were middle-aged or older also said that they believed in elves. And there was also a divide between those living in the countryside and those living in the city, in the capital region, where more people in the countryside reporting to believe in elves. Icelanders' relationship with elves and the concept of elf belief is quite complicated. Valor's talked about this before, especially in our episode of Supernatural Iceland about elves. It's not surprising that more women said that they believed in elves than men. When you get these people who do the kind of mediations between elves and humans when they're building roads through areas that are said to have kind of elf houses or rocks or whatever. The mediators tend to be women. But it is an interesting conversation and obviously one that seems to be sort of like dying out with time. But at the moment, I think Icelanders in general, they don't believe, but they don't necessarily want to say that so strongly. This is kind of similar. I'm from Scotland, and we have this a little bit with the Loch Ness Monster, where it's like you just don't want to put too fine a point on it. You don't want to say you definitely don't believe, because who knows, you know? And also because it's just nice to have a little bit of mystery in life. So, you know, it's interesting that people are still, there's, you know, I would still say that 31% is quite a high proportion of people who are willing to say, yes, I believe in elves. So that's everything from us at the Reykjavík Grapevine. We're going to enjoy our coffee. Please remember to like the video if you enjoyed it and you want to see more of what we're going to do around town this month. And also comment below. I love responding to the comments. It's something that I'm the first one to do. Sometimes Valor will jump on as well, but I really love doing it. So leave me a comment below and I'll get back to you. And I really enjoy reading about them. Don't forget, our print issue is out. I've finally brought you a copy after saying that I would last time. This features a cover that was done by a young photographer who's working with us at the moment. His name is Joanna Fontana. It's a cover story that we talked about as well in our latest podcast episode. That's up on all podcast apps now, and there'll be a video from it as well coming out later this week, so keep an eye out for that. And if you're coming to Reykjavik as well, consider ordering our Best of Reykjavik. This just came out last month, I think. It's got everything that you are interested in doing in Reykjavik. It's got museums like this one, it's got places to go and eat, it's got places to drink, it's full of beautiful photographs, it's expertly laid out by Art, who is multi-talented, and yeah, so I think that's everything from me. Like, comment, subscribe, send us an email, do all that stuff, and come check out the museum here. We love it and we think you will too. Okay, that's everything from us. Bye for now.